Hi, Dan Goodstein here. Welcome to Practitioner's Perspective. I'm here with Ramesh Balanagu. He's the head of automation at Avaya. Ramesh, good to be with you.
Dan, good to be with you. We've been always exchanging emails, so now we are live. So glad to be with you as well.
It takes a virtual world to get face to face with people these days, right? That's the
Yeah,
new world.
it is. And it's easy to connect virtually, right? You don't have to fly and stand in the lines.
Exactly, exactly. So, Ramesh, I want to ask you a little bit about some of the things you're doing in your career and at Avaya. Maybe you can give our viewers just a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Dan, I've been leading this automation since last year. Honestly, our journey in automation, I wouldn't call people have hijacked automation as RPA. Automation was there for a long, long time. Mainframes came, scripting came from VB, Excel, and then ERPs came, then came big data, cloud came. So, you talk to different people have their own perspective of automation. So yeah, but basically I've been in the space of ERP, middleware, MDM, and all those. Then I moved from a solution architecture to an enterprise architecture, and like everyone else, I embraced DevOps. And I think you will be seeing me many often times. My journey to RPA did not start with me. It started with my CIO asking me, Ramesh, what is our automation roadmap? Being an enterprise architect, you always do roadmaps. And I pulled out a deck calling on DevOps, and I said, here we are with a mutable infrastructure. We need to have a bare metal. Let's go here, there. And he said, there is something else automation. That something else was nothing but RPA, and that started a journey in late 2017. So here I am running this whole automation from Avaya, but also I run a automation meetup group in Dallas. It is probably the fourth or the fifth largest. Happy that we've been running from startups to the biggies, calling a lot of people, getting to learn a lot, including from you as well, Dan. So I get to learn, participate, and I do share my experiences. Yeah, that's about me, Dan.
No, thank you. And this kind of thing is helpful to our members to share your experience with them as well. So we appreciate it. So, Ramesh, one of the things I know you're most proud of is kind of helping to envision and really create a data driven, intelligent automation COE there at Avaya. Can you talk a little bit about that and what it looks like?
Yeah, sure. Actually, there's a saying, right? The latecomers are the laggards. I would say the latecomers or laggards are late in technology. They should be fortunate that they are learning through the experience of others. And then, so I consider that as an opportunity. It's like the very similar synology that you have is, US embraced 2G telecom way ahead. India was late, they didn't have the infrastructure, but look at it, they've jumped at 3G, 4G faster than US. So the same thing with us. We've been very fortunate to jump and learn. But the other thing that I consider myself fortunate is having been in the spectrum of enterprise architecture, I really could see a lot of synergy and value of applying automation from a strategy perspective. So that actually helped me fuel my automation COE. So honestly, I've been looking at Blue Prism's ROM. We are a Blue Prism customer, but I like UiPath, but that doesn't mean I'm endorsing anyone. I've looked at both of their ROM, and I've looked at, so from an enterprise architecture, we have a governance model. I don't want to bore you all to the governance model of an EA. So I've taken the best of the governance model from an EA and the ROM, which is another governance model, and if you see the common thing across all this, and in fact, even if you talk of data governance, which has been 20, 30 years, but people don't want to talk about it, all these talk about three things: people, process, technology. It's same wherever you go. So the same thing I took from the best of them, and I said, our COE needs to have all these tenets. So it starts all the way from vision, like everybody else talks, and then the tools, the technology, the security practices, the best practices. One thing I definitely have made in our COE is, which comes from my enterprise architecture, is we write reference architectures. The reference architectures are kind of a playbook for you as what to use, what not to use. That is helping my team because one of the big problem I'm seeing in the RPA world, Dan, is the quest of RPA being a cookie cutter or this hammer to do all is actually increasing legacy debt. I'll give two examples, not naming any vendor. XYZ Bank saved X millions of dollars using this XYZ vendor to modernize their systems. I thought that's great. That is great. But, by the way, I'm a very good friend of Shail. Shail said, Ramesh, read the article again very well. I started reading it. And that under the hood, the words were they migrated or they extracted data from one system to another system. Back of my mind, I said, Shail, this is ETL. What the hell does RPA have to do with it? The same thing I've seen with other guys. So people are using this blunt edge device and using it for across. So the whole purpose of RPA gets defeated if you are using it as a tool like an ETL or whatnot. This is where, from an EA, I enforce governance. So when a project comes back to us, being an EA, which I'm part of what we call as an architecture review board, we ask several questions. There's a document checklist. Why did you use this technology or why did you not use this technology? There may be some solutions where RPA fits in, like task automation is the best. But from a overall messaging standpoint, there may be other options. If no other option is there, it makes sense. So don't use RPA for the sake of RPA. Use it where it has value and use it its potency at its best. But if you start cookie cuttering it and then trying to circumvent and say RPA is the be all and end all, you are carrying the legacy debt. And then as an enterprise architect, my number one job is modernize and rationalize apps. We are, with RPA, the hype that it's going through, I fear that legacy debt will continue further. But again, there will be naysayers and all. My view or my intake is after reading all these cases, people are celebrating the glory of RPA, and ultimately I find it to become a gory of RPA. There's the glory and the gory of it.
I like that. I like that. Well, and I know, Ramesh, you have this kind of a perspective around kind of continuous automation. So what does that mean to you and to the organization?
So again, like I said, by virtue of being a latecomer, I have to thank everyone. When I say RPA, what do you see? The use cases. Supply chain has been improved. SBA loans have been improved, but then SBA came back and said, stop, Mr. RPA, you either use an API or use some other way. Beautiful noble cost, no doubt about it, or, procure to pay, order to cash. These were the ones. Why we started looking is, and I love RPA, no doubt, but I will bash RPA for the reason is I was just reading UiPath architecture on hyperautomation. Again, no offense to anyone, RPA is the backbone of everything. So it is acting as an orchestrator to connect to analytics, to connect to AI, to connect to process discovery, process mining. The more I look at that fabric, which they're saying, and this is what iPaaS used to do, right? So coming back, we are talking of modernization and automation, how it can revolutionize this whole world. And with this post-COVID, everybody loves to take the quote that Microsoft achieved 2 months, 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months. Yes, they have achieved digital transformation. If you start reading, the question that I ask people is, in the name of digital transformation, did you digitize or did you do a digital transformation? Do you know the difference? The answer is we digitized and we called it as digital transformation.
Right.
So now coming back, why we have to embrace continuous automation? A very simple question. If you have huge demand because of COVID, you need to buy too much of stuff on Amazon. What do you need? You need a useless, seamless experience where you could do shopping, where you could go online and purchase. That's what you need. What do you need for that? Infrastructure at scale. Can RPA do this thing? Can RPA act as a load balancer? Can RPA provision infrastructure? I'm not going to answer that. You kind of know that. So then you have to realize that RPA is a tool or enabler of digital transformation. This is the same problem we have in Avaya. I went back to our infrastructure guys. For them, automation is IAC, infrastructure as a code. You go to the DevOps guys. For them, DevOps is Ansible, Jenkins, so on and so forth. They can do blue-green deployment. They can stand up a server like this. We cannot stand up. RPA cannot stand up, and RPA is not meant for that kind of architectures. This is why the need of continuous automation is, I said, okay, you be the orchestrator. There are places where you can play. There are places where you cannot play. So even in the cloud, once you stand up an infrastructure, there are many things that DevOps cannot do. This is the beauty where RPA comes in. So by marrying or merging and making it as part of the DevOps pipeline, you are providing a seamless experience. So let's say if I were to, this is an example, a month and a half back, I don't know if you would have called AT&T, T-Mobile, or Chase. I don't know how much time it would have been. 45 minutes, 1 hour, 5 hours. So the first question that begets me was, what happened to the so-called digital transformation? We spent billions and billions. Why should I wait for 5 years? I've not seen anybody in RPA world talk of, how we could reduce those 5 hours call wait time. What the DevOps can do is, this is where it is probably, and actually people have done, is you stand up the virtual assistant, but to stand up the virtual assistant, you spin up the infrastructure so that then the infrastructure is there to receive those calls, and the virtual assistant then starts talking. RPA behind it starts interacting. This is seamless. In order to do this, the only way is you have to embrace continuous automation. It is not just RPA or DevOps. You need to get together and have an orchestrated pipeline to provide this true seamless experience. And the only way you do is, I know people are calling connected RPA or whatnot, but if you see anywhere, nobody is talking DevOps. If you don't have DevOps in your automation spectrum, you are not hyper automation or hyperventilated, which my Shale calls it. I read an article yesterday, somebody was calling extreme automation. All this is for what? Isn't it for digital transformation, to make your customer life journey better? Or even as an employee, I want to make my life better. Forget the outside world. If I onboard a customer, I want to make sure his journey is seamless, but there are many things beside RPA needed. So all these tenants, until you embrace, they're talking about RPA analytics. If I onboard an employee and if I make one mistake with the data, isn't data quality equally important?
Yep.
So I think, the work, at least my view is, if you don't embrace continuous automation, you are failing at the very point of RPA. RPA is only a task automation, but not a end-to-end process automation tool. I've actually copied some LinkedIn profiles where they say they're E2E digital transformation. I see a comma intelligent automation, comma hyper automation. And I'm like, what is E2E then? Oh, that doesn't include that. And then I see people now saying, RPA embraces AI. But all of this, now AI has actually evolved into AIOps or MLOps. I don't know if you've seen that. The reason is you want to put your models into the production faster and start improving your customer experience. So if you don't have MLOps with your RPA, then what are you doing? Where is this hyper automation? I don't get it. So the whole concept of continuous automation, long story short, if you don't embrace this DevOps, MLOps, your picture of automation is not complete. That's my view.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think so much of the conversation has been RPA driven or RPA led. And so, but we still see even major companies coming to us. They have kind of siloed successes, if you will, and they're looking for, ways to scale automation. And sometimes that's the right solution. Other times I say, well, what are you trying to scale? What outcome are you trying to get to? And to your point around, digitization versus digital transformation. That's why we launched our sister organization, Digital Enterprise Institute, because we felt too many of the conversations were around random acts of automation or random acts of technology, but not really a holistic conversation around how do I create an end-to-end experience for my customers, for my employees. And some of the things you're talking about, tying the front office to the back office. I mean, even something like that, still so much of the automation, as you know, has been back office centric.
Correct.
So the digital transformation piece is, how do we make this holistic and outcome based? And so we're spending more and more time with our members on that. But tell me about one of the key levers I think beyond RPA is AI and analytics. What are you guys doing in that space? How are you leveraging that
So
kind of technology?
actually, I just presented in Blue Prism what I call as a value-driven intelligent automation, which is my own abstract. Everybody has to create it. So I've started taking the levers of all the way from. Let's start from the RPA word. What do? We have to celebrate success. We do quick tasks. We make select success, and we show the beauty of ROI TCO. By the way, I hate those metrics because. No, because before I selected the vendor, I spent a year and a half evaluating this. Where do I calculate that ROI and TCO? So I think that's a BS metric that I don't believe in. But again, even I use it to celebrate the success because that's how you get, right? So it's a very false metric. I think, we've been looking more on something called a newer metric called ZCR, which I'll come back to that later. But coming back to your question, this is where I think strategy to automation comes into picture, that whole bigger picture. So, when you've done this task, the next thing is which line of business do I attack, where do I attack, and whom to speak. So, there is the other side of the world, which I call enterprise architecture. While you are trying to search, and actually this was based out of my experience, I spoke to a couple of automation customers, and they said, Ramesh, you know what? We've not had enterprise architects. Like I said, I count it as a blessing by virtue of being an EA and by virtue of being led to RPA. So EAs, what do? We call ourselves as ivory tower. People think EA are purely a rubber stamp. They make PowerPoints. That's what their goal is. What we do is three things. We build value chains and business capabilities. But the problem is we stop over there. We don't get into the process maps. What UiPath is actually doing is great, and even for that matter, Signavio is they've taken RPA and they've integrated with process mining. So when you connect with process mining, what you get is process maps. They have, I'm not endorsing anybody, by the way, I'm not a customer of them, but what they've done is they've taken this process maps and put it into a process repository. And then this process repository now gives you a reservoir of all your processes where you can automate. Again, RPA is one. I will repeatedly say RPA is one of the many automation tools. It is not the be all and end all. Sure. So you take this process maps. They have actually signed up with the German enterprise architecture company called LeanIX. So remember the gap I said, enterprise architecture starts with value chains and business capabilities L1 through L3, like, very simple. If you call supply chain as a value chain because it's providing value, then in the supply chain, there are many, many processes like inventory distribution, reordering, or wholesale. These are all many processes. In this process, what RPA is doing is a task creation. So basically, order creation is a task where RPA did. So until you connect this big picture of value chain to business capability to process maps, you really can't know where to apply and how to scale faster. So this is the same thing that whatever I've been doing, what I call a strategy to automation. I have taken this enterprise architecture, connecting with the dots, but in this spectrum, what I've also been doing is I've introduced data governance. For the reason, when a process is identified, you need to understand the quality of the data. You need to understand where the data resides. So let's say we say we want to do a supply chain like an order to cash automation. The biggest problem in the company is the single source of truth of an order definition. If you go to Dan, he will say one definition. If you go to Rameshwar, it will go to one definition. So the order entity definition, which is simple English, ORDER, means things to many, many people. So you are talking process, but you need to start talking about data discovery. This is what I call this whole strategy to automation. If you don't include your architecture, your data, and your process, then your automation is short-lived. And if you don't embrace continuous automation, again, there's a whole gamut of words I've thrown at you, but it's a journey we are going through. So if you don't go step by step working with other teams, have you done this discovery? Or like I said, that example, instead of using an ETL, I used RPA as a band-aid. You both are competing for the same thing. You are celebrating success. And then the very next moment, I call it glory to glory of RPA.
Yeah. Well, Ramesh, one more question, if I may. I'm curious as to what is your pipeline of kind of digital transformation opportunities look like going forward at this point, and what are some of the key KPIs in your mind?
So HANA is a very, very big thing for us, modernization, but RPA is equally big. So we have not taken the traditional use cases of automating through IT systems, which we are looking at modernizing our legacy, things which we could never modernize, like the mainframe kind of era. We are looking at a combination of RPA and DevOps to modernize. So RPA does its stuff of connecting, like a screen surface automation, and sends us back to the DevOps. But long story short, we are using it for modernization and this whole cloud expansion. So it's like, somebody asked, hey, what, we want this infrastructure for this. So that whole thing of provisioning of the systems to the modernization, we are using it in RPA. Now, from a KPIs, like I said, if I don't use TCO and ROI, I'm wrong. I still use them. But the big thing that we are looking, so CSAT and NPS have always been there. There's nothing different. But what we are looking at is a new metric called a ZCR, zero contact resolution. And this is what I call this value-driven intelligent automation. I'm sure you have to start writing down my acronyms. So the whole thing is, when a customer comes till his endpoint, how much of it is less of a human and how seamless it is. So the more the number of touch points of a human, that means the process, the first thing what we say is you always look for low maturity, high automation candidates, right? So we are attaching this metric of ZCR as, if you take this low maturity, high automation, how much of it could be automated through various ways, RPA, DevOps, data ops, whatnot. And the whole thing is make it seamless and have minimal human interference. That is a yardstick we've started embracing. Not from a KPI, the whole digital transformation, actually, we are struggling to see if we can do this OKR kind of concept, which Google has. Why I like that OKR concept is your objective is very clear. What do you want to achieve with your digital transformation? And the top 5 key results. So for me, I've transformed that digital transformation to digital automation, because digital transformation is a massive ocean. I don't think I can boil it. So with the digital automation, I have 5 metrics, which I call as key results. One is this rapid modernization. The second thing is the upgrade. And the third path is the ZCR. The fourth metric is, what is the time that I get back from my users, the productivity. So these 4 is what we call as an OKR. Again, it's in a very fledgling state of it, but I've been copying Google's OKR metric, which I think is very bold and visionary. But by defining the metric that by reducing our time to install from around 60%, which normally takes probably a couple of weeks, we've been able to reduce it not 60%. We brought the whole upgrade path to less than a day. So the metric was bold enough to say where and how we can attack it. People call it goals. It's a key result, which Google calls it, but it's very synonymous. So our whole goal is accelerate our modernization, improve our installation customer experience, and the TCO is a metric which I really don't want to talk about it, but the ZCR is a big one which I've started focusing heavily on it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, Ramesh, thank you so much for sharing your story. I hope maybe we can catch up with you in a couple months and see how things are going. And I look forward to collaborating with you on our Dallas and Texas chapters that we'll be launching. So
sure, I'd love to have you, Dan. Actually, we did a summit last year with around 200 people. Unfortunately, with COVID, it is what it is. But we'd love to have one more summit done in Dallas, and hopefully we'll see you there.
Sounds good, Ramesh. Good
All right,
seeing
bye.
you.
Bye.